know what you're thinking. Mar, another Cinderella review? You did that already. And yes, I did. But do you want to know why? Because I know what you were thinking during the last video. Mar, you keep dragging this movie with Camila Cabello. Why don't you tell me about it? And you know what? That's what I'm gonna do. So here's Mar's review of Cinderella, the Amazon Prime one. Starting off with the story. Guess what? It's Cinderella. The story takes place in a kingdom that doesn't have a name. This is Ella. Ella is a girl boss. She dreams of being a dress shop owner, but her stepmother and society says she can't because she's a girl. This is the prince. I don't know his name. He wasn't that interesting. Anyway, his dad, the king, says he has to get married for the sake of politics and power, but the prince wants true love. So the king decides to throw a ball where the prince has to pick a girl to marry by the end of the night. Ella decides to go for business purposes, but her stepmother says she can't and leaves without her. But then Ella's fabulous, not fairy, fabulous godmother magics her a dress, carriage, and sends her off to the ball. While there, she meets a queen from another kingdom who's interested in hiring Ella to make her dresses. Then she runs into the prince, they dance, and the prince asks Ella to marry him, but she says no, because she wants to live out her dream, so she leaves. The next day, Ella's stepmother tells her she should marry the prince for the sake of all of them, but again Ella says no and goes to meet the queen. While on her way there, she once again runs into the prince, who basically says he'll give up his crown to be with her, so he does. Ella gets the job with the queen, the prince's sister becomes the queen, the end. That's a really abridged version of the story. The way I originally wrote this, it was about double the length, and it wasn't even done. So while there's a lot going on in this movie, it's actually quite boring. There's just a bunch of small things thrown into the movie that don't really have anything to do with the main story. There's stuff going on with Ella's stepfamily, the prince's family, the mice, even certain side characters have their own things going on. It just feels convoluted. That's a fun word, isn't it? The characters. Again, it's got the Cinderella starter pack. There's Ella, the quirky and different girl boss, but not in a fun way. The prince, who again is so boring and really immature that I don't remember his name. It's Robert, in case you really want to know. I looked it up just for you. There's the evil stepmother and stepsisters who aren't actually evil. I'll touch on that more later. The king and queen, who have their own problems. Princess Gwen, the prince's sister who likes politics for some reason. The mice, which suck. The fabulous godmother, who appears then disappears. And the side characters who don't matter, but the movie acts like they do. So, as you might have guessed, none of these characters are particularly interesting, except, surprisingly, the stepmother. She's supposed to be the classic Cinderella evil stepmother, but she's not really evil. In the beginning of the movie, she's written to be more snarky and mean, but as the movie continues, you get the feeling that she's not really evil. She genuinely wants what's best for her daughters and her stepdaughter, because she couldn't have it. The music. This is a jukebox musical, and I did not know that going into it, so imagine my surprise when Idina Menzel starts singing Material Girl by Madonna. This movie contains music from artists like Janet Jackson, Desiree, Queen, Madonna, Nico and Vince, Earth, Wind and Fire, Salt and Pepper, White Stripes, Ed Sheeran, The Struts, and Jennifer Lopez. It also has a few original songs for Camila Cabello, Idina Menzel, and the news announcer guy, who I didn't mention because he's not that interesting.
I forgot to say my final thoughts on the music, so here's the sports ghost to do it for me. With the songs all being pre-existing, except for the ones I mentioned before, the soundtrack is basically a bunch of cover songs. They're not bad at all. The two original songs were also pretty good. They fit well in the story all in all. It's a decent soundtrack.
The costumes. A big general criticism that I have for this movie that I haven't mentioned yet is how this movie can't decide what era or time period it wants to be in, and I think the costumes showcase this very obviously. See, some of the costumes look to be very historical. I don't know much about historical clothing, so I don't want to name a particular time period, but I'm sure you can see what I mean. And these costumes are nice, but then they pull out these. Now again, I'm not an expert, but you can't tell me that this dress and this dress would have existed in the same period. Speaking of dresses, what the heck is this? When it's revealed that the princess is wearing this dress, it's supposed to be this big, wow, incredible, look at how talented Ella is. But maybe it's just me, but this thing is so ugly. Other than that, there's nothing to write home about. In conclusion, this movie is not good. Is it the worst movie ever made? I mean, no, I guess not. But Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cinderella is way more enjoyable than this one. So what's the movie's biggest problem? I feel like it wants to be taken seriously, but you just can't. You got Camila Cabello as Girl Boss Cinderella, James Corden as a mouse, and people who say poppin'. So it's not a mystery as to why no one can take it seriously. And in turn, why I don't either.